Hey, everybody. Welcome to the August meeting of Circle of the Dark Mother. We have a guest speaker tonight, and I'll let Richard introduce him.
Great. I met Brother Noy with the community of St. George. I want to say it was 2 or 3 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. I lose a sense of time. So we've had some pretty excellent conversations. We've had some very interesting lodge experiences, which has kind of pushed me in a positive direction with that. Even though I was very active and proactive, Noy's shared a great deal of information, and he's part of some groups that I would love for this group to learn about. And I'm going to turn it over to him. And I thank you, Noy, for showing up this evening.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks for having me. So, as Richard mentioned, my name is Noy Chounramany. I live here in Ohio, and currently I'm the local president of the Canton Study Center of the Theosophical Society in America. So that's a study group we started here a few years ago. And I've been a member for the Theosophical Society in America for about 10 years now. And I serve on their board of directors, and I also stand as a national speaker for the society. So tonight we will be going over just a lot of fundamental, basic ideas and aspects of Theosophy and the Theosophical Society. And I left plenty of meat on the bone and lots of room for questions and discussions. So absolutely do not hesitate on that front. I hope I can share screen. Am I able to share screen? I apologize. I should have mentioned that earlier.
Mark, if you make him a co-host, he could be able to screen share.
And you're muted.
And you're muted. We can't hear you.
Oh, yes. And so I said, yes, you can share. Let me figure out how to. So just make host. Is that what I click?
You make him your co-host. If I don't know what your screen looks like, but when I do it at work, if it's the little box off to the side, you click on his name and there's 3 little dots beside it, and you can choose to make co-host or a breakout room or any of that stuff.
It just says make host. I'm okay with that. Let's hit it.
Like, here where it is recorded.
Okay, you are now a host, so you should be able to share, Noy.
All right, thank you, Mark. I see the option here now.
And I will check for the future too.
Okay, everyone can see the screen there, okay?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, so we'll be discussing Theosophy and the Theosophical Society tonight, and especially just mentioning the differences and nuances, especially when we're talking about the word Theosophy. So we'll start by just dissecting what the word actually is, according to its etymological roots. So Theosophy comes to us from the Greek Theosophia, from theos, meaning God or the divine. John Algeo tells us that it's also related to the Sanskrit Deva, meaning God, divinity, or shining one. And of course, back to Sophia, which is wisdom. And conjoined, it would be wisdom of the gods or divine wisdom. So this is would be wisdom like unto the gods, not wisdom about the gods. Just to distinguish that. And we'll go straight to Helena Petrovna Blavatsky to see how she defines Theosophy. It's the wisdom religion or divine wisdom, the substratum and basis of all the world religions and philosophies, taught and practiced by a few elect ever since man, or we could say humanity, became a thinking being. In its practical bearing, Theosophy is purely divine ethics. So according to this train of thought from Blavatsky, we can look at Theosophy as a perennial philosophy. I like to term it as a golden thread of wisdom that transcends and connects all of our sincere mythologies, religions, and belief systems. And pretty much, I would say the kind of theosophy that's being presented here is more of that universal esoteric knowledge that's pretty much shared by most, I can't say all, but most of our systems around the world. And William Quan Judge, he was a founder of the Theosophical Society along with Blavatsky. In his book, The Ocean of Theosophy, he tells us, Theosophy is that ocean of knowledge which spreads from shore to shore of the evolution of sentient beings. Unfathomable in its deepest parts, it gives the greatest minds their fullest scope, yet shallow enough at its shores, it will not overwhelm the understanding of a child. So in this way, William Judge is telling us that the light of truth, it is self-evident in a way that not only can a child understand it simply, but also that it can expand our insights and realizations to a point of almost a profound realization. So it's both profound and both simple, the essence of truth. And that's what Theosophy attempts to investigate. And one of our modern theosophical scholars, Pablo Sender, if you haven't heard about him, he makes a lot of great content. You can find a lot of his videos on YouTube. He hosts lots of classes and courses on the Theosophical Society's main website, as well as the Crotona Institute of Theosophy. So those are some of the places you can find Pablo's work. In his book, Evolution of the Higher Consciousness, he tells us that Theosophy is literally divine wisdom, a state of consciousness in which there is a wisdom that does not come from knowledge and experience, but from the divine nature in human beings. And here, this is the Sanskrit word buddhi, meaning wisdom or awakening and insight, all those kind of ideas related to, for example, the personified Buddhas. So in this quote, Pablo Sender is alluding to the idea that not only is Theosophy an esoteric truth that's been spread throughout time, not only is it something that we can investigate, but Theosophy is also a state of consciousness. So in this way, we can think of it as gnosis, as expansion of consciousness, going beyond the mundane mind. So these are different ways we can look at the word Theosophy in itself. Now, moving on to the Theosophical Society. It was formed by several people, but three most influential are the founders of Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, William Quan Judge, and Henry Still Olcott. So Blavatsky was born in part of modern day Russia, but well, it was the Russian Empire, sorry, excuse me. The Russian Empire at that time, which it sits in modern day Ukraine. So there's lots of wonderful things we can say about Blavatsky. I really believe that she is one of the people that, you know, she definitely deserves a Netflix special or a movie about her. So without spending too much time on her huge life, we can mostly say that she was a independent, free-thinking, critical thinking woman in the 1800s. She was liberated in a way that she was betrothed to, excuse me. She was betrothed and wed. However, she left that marriage before consummation. And from that moment, she traveled the world in search of wisdom and knowledge. So she traveled pretty much in a lot of the places that we tend to see as spiritual epicenters. She traveled to Egypt. She went to Tibet and India, and she also traveled pretty much the whole world. She even did the horse and wagon trips through the Southwest United States, and spent time with shamans and indigenous American elders. So she was learning wisdom from the Americas, from the Asias, and as well as the Middle East. So one thing we can definitely say about Blavatsky is that she really did help to introduce esotericism and Eastern philosophy to the mainstream Western audience. Before that time, well, I would say at the time of her work, most of Western society was pretty much in a stalemate battle of conservative religious beliefs versus scientific knowledge. At that time was very popular and new to the debate table was the Darwin's theory of evolution and his work on the origin of species. So in this climate of religion versus science, Blavatsky really came as a center aisle person to synthesize the world of science and the world of spirituality. Blavatsky was inspired and called to travel to New York on July 7th, 1873. And the impulse was to gather with others to form a nucleus of a group. And during this journey, she met, as we mentioned earlier, Olcott and Judge. And through their initial acquaintanceship and friendship, they, with several others, founded the Theosophical Society in November 17th, 1875. A little bit about Henry Still Olcott. He was born in 1832 in New Jersey. He was a military man during the Civil War era. He worked for the Signal Corps. He was a special commissioner under the War Department, and he implemented lots of efficiency reforms and really helped to get those departments that he headed, really helped to get them more organized. And he was also part of the very special three-person commission that was tasked to investigate the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln. So this is just to say that he was a very successful, very influential, and well-respected individual who went on to help found the Theosophical Society. And in his civilian life, he practiced law. So Henry Still Olcott and Helena Petrovna Blavatsky were pretty much, we could say, best friends, very, very close to each other. And they were often termed the Theosophical twins because of their fraternal bonds that they formed with each other. Oops. So initially they met at the Eddy farmhouse in Vermont. That was a influential home that was known for producing supernatural phenomenon such as apparitions and knockings and the sorts of things that was associated with spiritualism at the time. So Blavatsky and Olcott both traveled to this destination independently of one another, not knowing each other at that time, simply to kind of, I guess, try to debunk those kind of situations and to show, where hoaxes could be exposed. Because Blavatsky, she was definitely not happy with the world of spiritualism where people were basically acting as charlatans under the guise of spirituality to influence and make money off of people. And it really muddied the world of spirituality at that time. And Blavatsky, as I said, early on, she really wanted to combat that. And the way she did was to travel to those places and act as a debunker. So another thing we can say about Olcott, he was elected as the first president of the Theosophical Society. And he was very, very influential in helping to restore Buddhism, Hinduism, and also Zoroastrianism throughout the different parts of Asia. Because at that time, with the cause and effect of colonialism and imperialism, Christianity definitely usurped a lot of those indigenous belief systems, and they were pretty much ridiculed and on certain fronts oppressed. So Blavatsky and Olcott definitely helped to restore the confidence and the passion for those Eastern religions. And the way they did that was they traveled throughout Asia and spent time with the last of the sages and gurus that were there, and really helped to reorganize and renovate the temples. Henry Olcott is also known for helping co-author the standardized Buddhist catechism. They built Buddhist schools through Sri Lanka and other parts of India. And Olcott also helped to co-design the Buddhist flag, which is still in use today. So this is just to show or to say that Olcott and Blavatsky were deeply were working hard for the promotion of Buddhism, Hinduism, and Zoroastrianism. And just to note, Blavatsky and Olcott both took and received the Buddhist vows. So although they were Theosophists, they were also Buddhists. And the third of the trio, William Quan Judge, was born in Ireland in 1851, immigrated to the US in 1864. Just like Olcott, he also was a lawyer. And he met Olcott and Blavatsky in 1874 through the literature People from the Other World. So when Judge read that literature, People from the Other World, it was about people from the past, I would say, once people transition to the other side of death. That work really inspired Judge to pursue an introduction with Blavatsky and to get to know her a little better. So once Judge made his way into the world of Theosophy, he quickly befriended Olcott and Blavatsky, and once the society was formed, he was elected as the general secretary and also the American section vice president. And William Quan Judge also led the Theosophical delegation at the very first World's Parliament of Religions that was held in Chicago in 1893. So he was at the first one, and he was our main delegate. And to be a member of the Theosophical Society, one does not have to subscribe to any sets of beliefs. One simply has to be in sympathy with the three objects of the society, which are to form a nucleus of the universal brotherhood of humanity without distinction of race, creed, sex, caste, or color, to encourage the comparative study of religion, philosophy, and science, and 3, to investigate unexplained laws of nature and the powers latent in humanity. So members of the Theosophical Society truly come from all walks of life, all religions, and also no religions. The Theosophical Society's international headquarters was established in Chennai, India in 1882. It sits on 260 pristine acres of almost undisturbed, almost a forest there. And it's nicknamed the Lung of Adyar because the rest of the city is highly developed, and we know what comes with that, the pollution and the hustle and bustle. But the Theosophical Society was able to secure 260 acres right in the middle of that city. And it really does provide a wonderful, wonderful oasis in that it is home to a lot of the native animals and species of that area. It provides a lot of fresh air from the manufacturing. So I hope they're able to keep that property for a long time. There are lots of offers to purchase parcels. And here in the US, we have our national headquarters up in Wheaton, Illinois. It was founded in, well, the American section itself was founded in 1886. So let's back up for a moment. So the Theosophical Society being headquartered in Adyar, Chennai, India, charters and warrants national sections and lodges. So the American section is under the jurisdiction of the headquarters in Adyar. The American section was the first national section to be formed of the Theosophical Society. Today it has about 40 acres, and it is classed as a Class 2 Arboretum. So they've been, throughout the last several years, they had a wonderful campaign to plant as many trees as they could, different varieties, focusing on native species as well. And they have an entire department team focused on maintaining and taking care of these trees. So if you're ever able to travel up to Wheaton, Illinois, I definitely recommend it. It's just a nice property just to wander around, have a nice sandwich, and walk around the property. Yeah, it was should say it was built in 1926, and the cornerstone was laid with co-Masonic ceremony under Annie Besant, who was the international president in 1926. So I didn't mention, or I didn't feature any of that footage or information, but if anyone's interested in that, there are some archival video of that event on YouTube showing Annie Besant and the other members of the Theosophical Society who were co-Masons at that time actually having the cornerstone laying ceremony. Also, if anyone knows him, influential philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti, he was also present that day. And before I get to this section, I would say that, well, I already said that, so I'll repeat it. The Theosophical Society does not dictate any form of belief. It does not promote any type of doctrine or dogma. Everyone's free to accept or reject whatever they like. But just under the umbrella of classical theosophical teachings, there are definitely a set of teachings there. And once again, members of the Theosophical Society are free to accept or reject those teachings as well. But I would say that the fundamental law of unity is probably the first and primary teaching of theosophical esotericism. Pretty much everything can tie into the teaching of unity and oneness. So here Blavatsky tells us in the book How to Study Theosophy Existence is one thing, not any collection of things linked together. Fundamentally, there is one being. One being. Once again, in The Secret Doctrine, Blavatsky tells us the radical unity of the ultimate essence of each constituent part of compounds in nature, from star to mineral atom, in the fullest acceptation of the term, and whether applied to the spiritual, intellectual, or physical worlds, this unity is the one fundamental law. And in the writings, the Mahatma letters by A.P. Sennett, so these are letters attributed to the Masters of Wisdom. One of the Masters of Wisdom tells us, when we speak of our one life, we also say that it penetrates, nay, is the essence of every atom of matter. So this saying here really touches on to the point of almost what we would call, well, I don't want to use terminology not in theosophical literature. So I would say that the universal life and the universal spirit is of one essence, and is that one essence that vitalizes and gives life to everything. The second, and well, I can't say second, this is according to my opinion. I would say the second greatest emphasis in the theosophical literature is the idea of brotherhood. And of course, when we say brotherhood, this is gender inclusive. So this is brotherhood, sisterhood, humanhood, human solidarity. So once again, the Masters of Wisdom in the Mahatma letters tells us the term universal brotherhood is no idle phrase. Humanity in the mass has a paramount claim upon us. It is the only secure foundation for universal morality. If it be a dream, it is at least a noble one for mankind, and it is the aspiration of the true adepts. So according to the Masters of Wisdom, part of aspiring to the true occult and esoteric life is to, or at least to understand and sympathize with the idea of universal brotherhood. And we'll tie this in with the idea of unity just mentioned a moment ago. So whether however way we look at unity, let's just say if the highest ideal of unity, we call it God of any religion, maybe we may call it universal spirit, Atma, Brahman, Brahma. Let's see, what else could we say? We could call it the higher self, the highest self, or we could call it universal consciousness. I mean, really any scientific, philosophical, religious term that we can apply to the highest ideal, okay? So let's just say that if we undergo our life in a way where we perceive each person that we encounter as being aspects of the divine, or being aspects of ourself, or being aspects of God. When we come into the world with that kind of a realization and that kind of a knowingness, that kind of a gnosis, in my opinion, we will naturally approach each living creature with more compassion naturally, totally independent of any moral or ethical walls. This will just be simply a blossoming of the heart center, because we know that the self is in the other, or we know that God is within the other, or we know that the universal spirit is within the other. Or at the minimum, we can even say that the concept of cause and effect. So all that we do is going to have great impacts and effects upon the outer world. So if everything's interconnected, why not send out the goodness that we can? So these are just ways to connect unity and the idea of solidarity of humanity. And Blavatsky tells us in her collected writings, Universal brotherhood rests upon the common soul. It is because there is one soul common to all humans that brotherhood or even common understanding is possible. So once again, that's really being precise and concise with my long drawn out explanation. I think this is, not to throw too many quotes at you today, I think this is our last major quote. And just to summarize, Blavatsky in her collected writings tells us, he who does not practice altruism, he who is not prepared to share his last morsel with a weaker or poorer than himself, he who neglects to help his brother man of whatever race, nation, or creed, whenever and wherever he meets suffering, and who turns a deaf ear to the cry of human misery, he who hears an innocent person slandered, whether a brother theosophist or not, and does not undertake his defense as he would undertake his own, this person is no theosophist. So once again, in my opinion, once we reach into the heart of gnosis to really blossom those realizations of the shared spirit and the shared consciousness within all living creatures, how can we not aid others in their suffering? So Blavatsky is just basically telling us the sincere theosophist cannot turn a blind eye to the world's suffering. And here, this is called the Universal Prayer. It was introduced to us by Annie Besant. And it really, really summarizes the Theosophical wisdom very beautifully. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May all who feel themselves as one with thee know they are therefore one with every other. Right. Sorry, I didn't give a warning before I flashed the screen back. So that just concludes the PowerPoint presentation part of it. And so the theosophical teachings are very, very wide in scope. But just for today, just to kind of show the spirit of theosophy, I focus on its main two precepts, which are universal brotherhood and the oneness and unity of existence. So there's so much more that we could discuss, and I would really love to hear from everyone here. And so I don't know how, Mark and Richard, how do we normally do this? If you guys moderate that or people just speak?
Pretty much we're a free for all. So people just
Okay.
speak or type questions if they don't feel comfortable speaking.
Okay. And if there's any deeper theosophical teachings or concepts you would like me to elaborate upon, I'd be happy to do that as well.
I definitely have a lot of questions to throw to where the group might get a little deeper understanding. Maybe some misconceptions or some ideas that there's a lot of information about groups or organizations, some of them being factual and so much that is not being told as giving the truth of a tradition or a lineage or a lodge-based system. You know, I'll let other people ask questions and then I'll kind of throw it out there just to give a deeper insight from your experience. If that's okay with you. Okay.
Yep, sounds good.
So, excuse me. Given the time frame and just some of my cursory understanding what Theosophy is, it seems like there's almost a direct relation to Hermeticism or the Hermetics. And then also, just given the time frame, I wonder what the spiritualism movement in America was in relation to the foundation of the Theosophy Society at that time.
Okay. Thank you for that's a good point. So a lot of the ancient wisdom traditions out there, at least the ones that we really know about, Hermeticism, as you mentioned, um, the Vedic texts, and some of the esoteric Buddhism, uh, uh, the Kabbalah tradition of Jewish mysticism. I would even say alchemy and Rosicrucianism. All of these topics, they pretty much are in sympathy with one another as far as trying to explore the truth of reality. And if we look beyond the form and the names within these different systems, we kind of see that there are a lot of similarities and a lot of shared ideas. Theosophy absolutely does have uh, it does share wisdom with Hermeticism as well. Theosophy itself is like I said, it's tracing that esoteric thread through all of the systems, but not just tracing the thread, but also delivering it to us today in a modern context. So that was Hermeticism, spirituality, spiritualism. Yeah, definitely. I would say, at least here in the US, from what I've researched, spiritualism, as far as doing seances and having apparitions and knocks and bells and things like that, it really seemed to be a very, very popular form of entertainment. It seemed to be, this is just for me looking backwards, spiritualism seemed to be one of the more popular forms of alternative spiritual thought. Because at that time, U.S. U.S. Society was Christian-based, Judeo-Christian-based to a major extent. So it really took a while for Western esotericism and Eastern philosophy to really come into the mainstream mind, the U.S. mainstream mind. So spiritualism, I think, it served its purpose. I don't think it was necessarily just a bad thing. Spiritualism helped in some ways to open the curiosity of the American people who were, in general, before that time, very religious, just strictly religious. And I think spiritualism allowed people to explore the idea of life after death. What is the mystery of life? What is the world of the unseen? And I think spiritualism, like I said, it took us as a society one step into that. However, the Theosophical Society and Theosophy and Blavatsky, but not only them, a lot of our other known occult workers, they really came to unmuddy that water and to kind of show, here's this phenomenal force you guys are using to kind of do parlor tricks. Let me explain to you what it really is. And it's not even just explaining something. It's here's a set of practices or principles for you to cultivate within your own life. How about you go investigate it yourself? So it's definitely not presenting any kind of super spiritual powers that a guru can have above other people. It's everyone. Like I said, in the third point of the Theosophical Society, to investigate the hidden laws of nature and the latent powers within humanity. So those latent powers include clairvoyance and extrasensory perceptions.
So I wanted to ask, so first of all, thank you. This is awesome. Second, I've heard of Blavatsky. I've heard of the Theosophical Society, but I haven't heard much about it today. And so I sort of thought it was something that was gone. So am I just traveling in the wrong circles, or why don't we hear more about it?
Well, like I would say with most of the major occult groups, the major spiritual groups, churches, all kind of stuff, membership's been dropping the last several decades as a whole. There has been, some resurgences here and there in different pockets. But I would say, just to start the question, the Theosophical Society has suffered some membership losses and some lodge losses, just as most of the other groups have as well. I think another part of it is, Theosophical Society has been here since its inception. But in some ways, I would say that, okay, let me back up and preface this. Sometimes Blavatsky is known as the grandmother of the New Age movement. And to bring that movement to this discussion, I would say that Theosophy is pretty traditional, straightforward, and it requires, like all dedicated occult and esoteric systems, it requires research, it requires study, it requires lifestyle changes, it requires discipline, and the whole range of what it would take to make ourselves a more enlightened individual. And not to disparage or ridicule any systems out there, but sometimes a lot of the New Age material and even some of the New Thought material, to a lesser extent, tends to paint a easy button picture of spirituality. Let's just say, instead of working on your inner self and exploring your shadow and transcending all of our taboos and opening our minds to a higher form of education, maybe backing away from some of our vices and for healthy, constructive reasons. Instead of doing all of that, let's just have the law of attraction. You believe it, it's going to happen. And even things like crystal work. Like I love crystals, I love stones. But those, to me, those are tools that are used to magnify the will of the wielder. Where today it's almost presented in some circles. Oh, you don't have any love in your life? Here, takes this rose quartz and everything will be fine. It's just so I think in that way, the New Age movement and its associated information streams have kind of made the easy button route more glamorous and more. It's wrong to say it makes spirituality seem more attainable in an instant gratification kind of a way. So just because the seriousness of Theosophy, I think, draws people away. If you've ever seen Blavatsky's books, just her books, they're huge. They're really big. And not only that, she uses what I would call vocabulary words. Every few pages, I have to bust open the Webster dictionary. I'm like, what the heck did that mean? So you really have to be a serious student in Theosophy, just like I said, like most occult systems.
Can I say something?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny, Noy, that you said that about crystals, because I went crystal shopping today. I love crystals, and I'm looking into crystal healing. And I said the same exact thing today to my fiance about the rose quartz. I was like, here's a rose quartz. It'll attract love. Not that you might have a problem with yourself and need to do all these things to why do I not have love in my life? What is the problem? Is it me? Do I have to fix this? Do I have to do that? And you said the exact same thing I just did. That's crazy. But yeah, people don't want to. I agree. People don't want to put in the work for the lifestyle changes, for picking up something deep. It's you have to be willing to put in the work. Not just oh, like you said, law of attraction, manifestation, that actually you actually need to know what you're doing. And I think research that. Even it's not just oh, I'm gonna put this out into the universe and it's gonna happen. No, it doesn't work like that. Those even have repercussions if you don't even manifest the right way. So sorry.
A wonderful
that's
comment.
Perfect.
And it's good for me just to add, in the Theosophical literature, Blavatsky calls it the occult sciences, occult science. And based on what you said to add, I think that's to call it an occult science, that really shows us that you know, it's a method, but also there's some trial and error there. You know, we have to work at it. We have to work at it. There's not an instant button. There's not an easy button. And
So as a follow-up question,
Mhm.
so today, not as in today, but in today's, culture, what does the society do? Like, what kind of meetings do you have? What kind of stuff do you do as, is there a course? What all do you have?
Oh, there's a little bit of something for everybody. Absolutely. So first and foremost, the Theosophical Society is known, or at least the American section here in Wheaton, Illinois, our headquarters is known as being probably the world's largest occult library. I think I can confidently say it is the largest selection in a single occult library. So with the kind of literature there, you could always visit the library. Certain book members can borrow like a library system. Tons and tons of archival videos of all kind of subjects. I mean, it's not just theosophy. We're talking about regular religion, the mystical sides of those religions, esoteric sides of those religions, getting into really core theosophy, getting into the ancient mystery traditions, science, philosophy. There's even some wonderful mystical poetry segments that we have.
Mm.
So first, there's a little bit of something for everybody. Just pick your topic and you'll be able to find a resource. We have a wonderful resource called Theosophy Wiki. So it's like a Wikipedia type site, Theosophy Wiki. So that site, it features a lot of Blavatsky's core literature, but it also has a nice search function where it'll come up with entries and links and articles similar to how a Wikipedia page will present itself. Yeah, so I would say for anyone's spiritually inclined at all, there's something for everyone there. Now, as far as what kind of courses or classes are taken with the Theosophical Society, one thing to note is that all of the individual lodges pretty much are, they're not sovereign, they're not independent, but there's a lot of freedom and a lot of liberty. So local lodges tend to create their own programs as far as the kind of topics that they like to study, the kind of speakers they want to bring in. So you'll see the local lodges will pretty much mirror the interests of the local members, and they also by default bring in core theosophy speakers and core theosophical literature as well. But it's a mixture. Now, for people that really want to pursue Theosophical Society theosophy, there are I would recommend Pablo Sender. He has on YouTube several playlists that really explore core theosophical literature. Like, he has many videos to help us read and study the Secret Doctrine. The Secret Doctrine is a huge multi-volume masterpiece, and he helps us navigate that and points out significant parts of the text. He covers, I would say, all of the main theosophical concepts. So he's a wonderful theosophical scholar that is actively engaged in the theosophical work today. He writes a few books as well. For the if you want to go further, the Theosophical Society itself hosts Thursday night lecture series. So there's a free YouTube lecture every Thursday night. Time zone differences here. I think it's like 8 p.m. Eastern time, Thursdays. Don't 100% quote me on the time. Just check out the website. And on that website as well, the website of the Theosophical Society in America, they showcase lots of paid for classes. So you have to register and pay for certain classes to learn from experts in certain fields. So that really ranges from all kinds of different spiritual topics, not just theosophy. Now, if Okay, now finally getting there. If you really, really, really want to get into just core Theosophy and get in as deep as you can, Pablo Sender helped to co-launch the Spearhead, the online School of Theosophy. So the online School of Theosophy is a online digital curriculum, and it goes through methodically the core theosophical ideas that make up the esoteric system. And that's a really good way to learn Theosophical Society Theosophy, is probably through the curriculum of the online School of Theosophy.
Awesome.
But really,
Thank
like
you.
I said, there's a little bit of something for everyone.
Really cool. And it's interesting because to a degree, that's what we're trying to do here
Mhm.
is, you know, we have our traditions, all of us, but we're trying to get the ability for people to hear about all kinds of different paths. So thank you so much. And I'll turn it over to other people or Richard with questions.
Did anybody else have any questions before I go on my rants of questioning and throwing ideas? Okay. So you answered one of the major questions that I wanted to kind of throw out on the table. Mark already asked that question. Was what is the structure of the curriculum? How is that laid out to where a person can access that? I do know from my encounter of my visits with you, Noy, that the walls were lined for every subject, every idea or thought that you could manifest in your mind to research. There seemed to be someone that is exploring that subject. So really, my next question is, how does this tie into co-Masonic affiliation for both men and women? Because the societal structure was predominantly masculine and was ruled by a structure that was mostly pressed by men. And how does that influence the evolution of Eastern and Western concepts from then to now?
So I'll try to answer that as best as I can. That's a great question, and it almost would deserve its own talk. So just very quickly, I'll answer your last point first. The East and West, the East and West, the coming together of East and West. So with the first leadership of the Theosophical Society, we count that as Blavatsky, William Quan Judge, and Henry Still Olcott. Their literature was primarily core theosophy that was rooted in Vedic ideas and esoteric Buddhist ideas. So in their literature, it really presents ancient wisdom and even Western esotericism through the lens of Sanskrit language. And so I would present that as the original Eastern influence in the Theosophical Society. And through the work of Blavatsky and the others, as I mentioned in the PowerPoint presentation, they helped to introduce Buddhism and Hinduism and the Vedic texts to the mainstream Western audience. Now, with bringing back the Western stream would be the second generation of theosophical leadership. So that would be Annie Besant and Charles Webster Leadbeater, if anyone's familiar with those two. So Annie Besant and Leadbeater, they were true to core theosophy and the literature of their predecessors. However, they started to introduce to the society more language associated with esoteric Christianity and the thought, the idea of like a Christ consciousness and looking at the drama of Jesus in a more allegorical way of comparing it to the human and the micro and macrocosmic sides of the spectrum. And Leadbeater himself was an influential member of the liberal Catholic Church. So those traditions came into the Theosophical Society second generation, and really helped to merge East and West in a more comfortable manner, so that one could feel very comfortable talking about esoteric Christianity or mystical Judaism, right next to the text speaking of Vedic mysticism and esoteric Buddhism. Now with co-masonry, it's a completely separate, independent movement than the Theosophical Society. So let's see. So as most know, traditional Freemasonry is men-only organization. However, when we look to the most ancient of the Masonic documents, we quickly realize that women were members in the days before the Grand Lodges were created. So in the mid-1800s in France, after Freemasonry was men only for 100+ years, we started to get some brother Freemasons in France that really wanted to promote gender equality in Freemasonry, along with the restoration of women to Freemasonry. Because it's not the introduction of women, it's the restoration too. So one of the prominent figures behind that movement, his name was George Martin. George Martin. That was my attempt at French. George Martin. He was a member of the Grand Log Symbolique Écossaise, which is English translation, the Scottish Rite Grand Lodge. They come from the tradition of it's a long tradition, but it's also connected with the original ancient and accepted Scottish Rite of the southern jurisdiction, which came from Charleston to France. So that's part of our lineage, was George Martin. So he tried to get the Grand Lodges of France to recognize women into Freemasonry. And he tried, and he was able to help one lodge change in their bylaws that women could be admitted. So this singular lodge, which in those days where things were more liberal, lodges could break away from their jurisdictions and declare independence, and they were still considered a legitimate lodge. So one of the lodges did that. It broke away from its Grand Lodge, wrote in its bylaws that they could admit women, and they did. And that was on 1883 with one of our founders of co-masonry, Marie Durem. So in France, so let's wrap this up real quick. The first Grand Lodge of women and men equal together within one Masonic jurisdiction was established in 1893. 1893 in Paris, France. And from that, so let's give it a name. The International Order of Freemasonry for Men and Women, Le Droit Humain. So Le Droit Humain is a French phrase that means the human right, the right of the human. In the life of Annie Besant, who I mentioned, she was the second international president of the Theosophical Society. She found out about Le Droit Humain and co-masonry, and she traveled from England to France, was admitted into Freemasonry, brought the tradition back to England, and helped to establish the first co-gender Masonic lodge in England. And from there, they established an entire federation in England, the British Federation of Le Droit Humain. And the British Federation was led as one federation under the headquarters in France. It was led by Annie Besant, and she was the Grand Commander of that British Federation. So Annie Besant, being originally a Theosophist, she really helped to cross-pollinate the two organizations. So she was the main person to spearhead the cooperation and the friendship between the Theosophical Society and co-masonry, known as Le Droit Humain. So basically, Annie Besant almost single-handedly helped to spread co-masonry further around the world in more countries around the world than any single individual. And that went hand in hand with her theosophical work. So a lot of people at that time that were associated with the Theosophical Society, um, they took inspiration from Annie Besant. She's a very wonderful woman. If anyone wants some good reading or good study, look into her biography. It's a wonderful life. So a lot of people followed her and went dual membership to both organizations. There'll be a co-mason and a member of the Theosophical Society, but both organizations are completely separate from each other. And I would say through those dual members, we had occurrences, like I mentioned earlier, the cornerstone laying of the headquarters in Illinois, which was done by co-masonic ritual of the yeah, I won't be able to pull it up right now. I was hoping I could pull it up. An entire co-masonic ceremony and ritual to lay the cornerstone. Um, so through Annie Besant, her peers and her successors in the Theosophical Society, they really helped to grow co-masonry throughout the world. But in a lot of ways, Annie Besant also helped to preserve that deeply esoteric spirituality within co-masonry. So within the co-masonic tradition, the rituals, the symbols, it is all meant to be investigated on a very, very personal level. We're not just there to have an opening, closing ceremony, and that's it. We really look at our Masonic workings as being symbolic for our own personal lives and our own personal work. So I would say that Annie Besant and some of the Theosophists that wrote literature at that time helped preserve that esoteric stream. So when I say authors, theosophical authors, that would include Charles Leadbeater and Jeffrey Hodgson. So they wrote some good literature. Yeah, so co-masonry it still exists here in the U.S. today, although it is a more of a minority fraternity. It was established here in the U.S. In 1903. So, Richard, did that answer your question, or do you want me to elaborate further on something there?
That definitely answered the question in a historical context, and I think a lot of it should be investigated personally. Because there's so much literature available, there's so many resources available. When you start digging, just knowing about the society and knowing that, hey, you still exist and there's all these things that you can do with it, and what kind of avenues or what kind of curriculums are being used. Also, like, it's more about humanitarian ideas and helping and supporting one another and building upon gaining deeper knowledge and insight, and finding the best inside of yourself and those that surround you. What is the organizations doing here in this country right now that's promoting the welfare of like humanitarian movements and like environmental or maybe reconstructed ideas, not only ideas, but what are they doing to push forward to the future at this point here in the Americas?
Wonderful question. So as far as more charitable humanitarian working, we have the Theosophical Society of Service. So that is it's a separate how would you call it? It's a separate charitable wing under the umbrella of the Theosophical Society. I'm not using the right words, but that's just what I'm coming up with at the moment. So it's dedicated to exactly what you mentioned there, helping others, giving support to the poor, Lots and lots of things like pet shelters, homeless shelters, natural disaster relief, uh, helping underprivileged children with their start of the school year or winter clothing. The Theosophical Service works in lots of different ways. So on a local level, it's dependent on the inspiration of the local members. So if there's a particular cause that the local members want to support, they'll tend to form a Theosophical Society or a Theosophical Order of Service, event, and take steps to aid in the relief of that suffering, whatever it may be. And the Theosophical Order of Service also does the same on a national level as well. I can't, they're not really dedicated to one single cause over another. So it's just a little bit of everything, all related to humanity and the environment. Something that the Theosophical Society is doing on a local level, as I said, at least on their headquarter premises in India and here in Wheaton, Illinois, they really try to preserve the natural balance of the ecosystem. So they leave a lot of room for the animals, and the Theosophical thought is to respect the life of all living creatures. So there's a lot of consideration into the plant and wildlife, and trying not to disturb the habitats of the local creatures. In the earlier days, especially like under Annie Besant, she was a lot more vocal and about her causes. For example, she really stood up for labor rights and union rights, and she helped to support the Irish independent movement. And Annie Besant also helped to establish independence in India, where she was actually elected as the first president of the Indian National Congress that was working towards Indian independence from the colonial powers at that time. However, in today's world, lots of our members, for many reasons, we tend to keep our social work, our service work, our political work kind of separate from the organization. So Theosophists are out there doing all kind of hands-on work, but not too much under the Theosophical banner. In that way, to really keep things as neutral as possible. Because, well, I would say realistically, there are so many causes out there. I don't think it's wise to force any particular cause on many people. I think all the causes out there, all of us naturally feel inclined to help in some way. So if we all just work for what our skill set provides and also what our heart pulls towards, we almost would have worldwide. We as humans, not we as Theosophists, we as humans would have most of the suffering resolved if we all did that. Just do what you can with what you got. So pretty much that's the Theosophical life. So we try to live those principles more than just organizing under a banner to get things done.
Richard, before you ask another question, Jeff asked in chat, how does Alice Bailey fit into the Theosophical tradition?
Good question. Alice Bailey. So Alice Bailey, I'm not quite sure about her early life, but as far as public record of her emergence into the public eye, she pretty much got her start in the Theosophical Society and was a well-respected member of the society. However, later on in her in the progress of her path, I'm not going to say take a side here, because it's a controversial topic in Theosophical circles. So there came a time where the teachings and the methodologies of Alice Bailey began to grow and expand beyond the scope of accepted Theosophical literature. So I would say that was elaborating further on the Masters of Wisdom, things like that. The controversy was that some felt her teachings were becoming her teachings and were not representative of theosophical teachings anymore. So Alice Bailey ended up, it was almost twofold. Her dues weren't renewed, and then she got kicked out. I mean, it's almost simultaneous thing. She wasn't kicked out because she was kicked out. She was kicked out because of the dues. So it kind of benefited her and her opponents at that time. So it kind of saved face, so there wasn't any drawn out arguments. And then with her severing from the Theosophical Society, she went on to establish her own methodologies and systems and literature of her esoteric understandings. I think a lot of that was, if I'm not mistaken, under the Lucis Trust. And yeah, so I would say the majority of Alice Bailey's known works, they are her own teachings. But she was absolutely was a wonderful theosophist while she was a member. She really helped the society a lot. It was just her blossom grew beyond the scope of the society, so she needed her own space to create her own organization. If you don't mind, I'll just quickly touch on a major point of Alice Bailey's work compared to theosophical work is the topic of ascended masters and the masters of wisdom. So in the theosophical literature, we are taught that the masters of wisdom are purely mortal humans. They are simply high-level adepts in the esoteric philosophy and occult sciences. So we can think of these as highly developed sages, gurus, miracle workers, any one of that kind of ilk. So those are who the masters of wisdom are. They are just people who have mastered the experience of being human. So they're able to do things like, of course, all of the things associated with extrasensory abilities and clairvoyance, but also things like keep their bodies very healthy, extend their lives to a certain extent. They're not immortal, but they can live longer than us. It's said for, on average, maybe a couple hundred years, a few hundred years, nothing really crazy. So these masters of the wisdom, they tend to reside outside of society. So they tend to go into wildernesses and mountains. So that way they can be less distracted from all of the thought forms and all the karma and all of the cause and effect and all of the noise of our normal civilization. They want to get away from all of that and really focus on, they say in the theosophical literature, working on the inner planes to help humanity along. So this would be maybe working on the astral plane, working on the mental plane, working on the spiritual plane to try to have a greater influence, through their will or through their work to spread compassion and love. So that's what they're doing, trying to work on the subtle planes instead of the physical planes. Where Alice Bailey, if I'm not mistaken, she's really the one that helped to pioneer the idea of ascended masters. So this is the idea that's really popular today of ascended masters being these immortal, this idealized demigod almost in a way of someone who may be attainable, at least communication with them through astral projection or meditation. More, I would say the ascended master teachings almost raise the masters of wisdom up to almost maybe like an angelic level almost. I think that's a good way to say it. So that's not in resonance with the original theosophical teachings. So that's a good example of why, you know, the Alice Bailey teachings diverge from the original Theosophy. But I'm not here to say what is right and what's wrong.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my next questions, and I'm glad that Jeff brought that up. And thank you, Mark, for making that a point to address people's questions. You know, the idea of like the concepts of how we understand like left and right hand path, the ascended masters, the invisible schools, you know, that kind of branch off from these societies and groups. And yeah, again, the misunderstood ideas about what the society promotes comparison to what evolved out of this society, which is substantially a different thing, or it could be interconnected some way depending on people's involvement and what they choose to involve themselves with. So if a person had sincere interest, truly wanted to investigate this, what would be their steps of introduction, or what kind of waiting process, or how long should they stay within a certain curriculum, or how does that work for a person seeking entry?
Mhm. Yeah, because of the Theosophical Society's open-minded mission statement and workings in general, membership is very easy to obtain. It's just simply getting on the website of the Theosophical Society in America and signing up for membership. There's no waiting process for that. It's just pay your annual dues and you're in. Um, and you'll become a member of the Theosophical Society in America by doing that. But I would just say that as long as you can sympathize with the three objects of the society, so that's universal brotherhood, uh, the study of comparative religion, philosophy, and science, and the investigation of hidden laws of nature and latent powers in humanity. Um, then one can become a member at large. So you're simply you become a member of the Theosophical Society. You'll start to receive the Quest magazine. You'll start to receive the new member email packets, which give introductory lessons. So those last for 1 year. They're more contemplative readings than actual, you know, question and answer sessions. So those are just those as well, accept or reject. There's nothing required other than the three objects. Um, and then if one wants to become an actual lodge member of the Theosophical Society, you would just once again jump on the website, go to the lodge locator, and if there's one close to you, hopefully there is. You would just contact that individual lodge or try to show up at one of their public meetings. The vast majority of lodge meetings in the Theosophical Society are public meetings. When we say lodge meetings, those are just members of the Theosophical Society who are gathering together to discuss topics of mutual interest. So a lot of lodge meetings will consist of, if they're, you know, if they're fortunate to be able to bring on a guest speaker, they would have a guest speaker, either from the local community or, you know, anywhere at all, based on what they would like to information they'd like to receive. Sometimes they'll watch a documentary or a video together and then discuss that. Sometimes they'll do a reading and then this group discussion about the reading. So like I mentioned earlier, all of the individual lodges pretty much have their different flavors. So just, you know, you'd contact that lodge and see if, you know, if you're right for the lodge, if the lodge is right for you, you know, it has to be a mutual thing. And ask that local lodge what membership would entail. On the lodge level, once again, it's the same thing. It would just be a membership application and paying that local dues. A lot of lodges are free because you're already paying that national membership. but because of operational costs of renting a building to have meetings, some local lodges do have their own separate dues as well. But as I said, those lodges, they do offer a lot of public meetings, so you could just always attend those without becoming a member. But becoming a member, of course, is the best way to support any organization.
Great.
And they're not strict on membership requirements, because like I said, they're really fostering mutual respect for each other's differences and for all people to have complete freedom of thought. So it's a very easy, laid back process to join.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else have any questions or anything they wanted to ask Noy?
I wanted to say again, thank you. Really interesting. And a lot, I knew of the society somewhat, but lots of stuff I had no idea. So really, really good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, if no other questions. I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you again, Noy. Thank you, Richard, for contacting Noy and having him join, because really cool. As always, we will meet again next month for Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern. I will send out to our membership information in our newsletter. I'll also put it on some of the groups we're part of. And also, we're always on Witch Lab's event calendar. So if you don't get information any other way, you can get information that way to find out what we're doing. This will be available on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, which is, of course, a much larger group that'll get to consume this, and great information. If any of you have any ideas of things you'd like to see us cover in the future, whether it's something Richard or I could do, or one of you, or go out and get a guest speaker like we had tonight, please let us know, because we're always open to new topics. Richard, anything you wanted to close with, or?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Noy for taking time for us this evening, sharing about the history and how things have formed and how they've evolved, and some of the ideas to greater understanding. I find that the ideas of knowledge, wisdom, and human connective interaction is such a powerful tool. So this is wonderful, and I'm very glad that he showed up this evening and shared what this organization supports and shares to the world. And hopefully the people that see this that are interested gravitate towards that. And so thank you, Noy, and thank you everybody for being here. And I look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you.